Welcome back, folks. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. I'm Christian Esparza. Alex Napoles with me. Very excited for our next guest. Let's get out to the Zone phone. He's going to help us break down and preview Wednesday night's NBA draft. It's Matt Babcock. He is an NBA draft analyst. You can read him at babcockhoops.com. What's up, Matt? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
So excited for Wednesday. It's a big night. Here in Salt Lake City, I was talking about with my co-host off the air, kind of feels like for the Jazz especially, one of the biggest nights in franchise history as far as needing to exit this rebuild.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the fifth pick in this draft is a big one. This is a good draft, at least towards the top. So you're absolutely right. I think they have a great opportunity to add, a potential, game changer.
So looking at the draft on Wednesday night, realistically, I mean, obviously you're not going to see a Cooper Flag fall to fifth, but realistically, what are the names that Jazz fans specifically should be looking at that number 5 pick?
You know, every year leading into the draft, there's so many rumors and smoke screens being thrown. And this year feels like that even more so than usual. And so a lot of it is, who's going to be there. And I think, as you mentioned, Cooper Flag's going to go number 1. Everybody's confident Dylan Harper will go number 2. After that, it starts to get a little dicey. I'm an NBA draft analyst. I'm supposed to be one that they project these picks. I've never been so uncertain about the lottery as I am this year. So, but to answer your question, I'm expecting VJ Edgecombe to go number 3, and then the next group of guys will be somewhat order of Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears. Come on, Malawat from Duke. His name keeps getting thrown around. So I would assume if they're staying put at number 5, they'll probably be with that group. Also, Con Knuppel from Duke. It likely will be from that group.
Ace Bailey has been a hot topic this week, obviously, with not working out with NBA teams, reportedly canceling his workout with the Philadelphia 76ers. What's going on there? Do you think he's just getting bad information from an agent? Do you think he might be banged up and not wanting to show that? Or do you think he's trying to force his way to a specific team or situation?
I think it's a little bit of all of it. And, I think part of it is that there were question marks with him on the court, the on-court evaluation. I mean, very talented player, 6'8", tough shot maker. I mean, does some things that only, star players do. So it just gives him an extremely high ceiling. But, I think in his interviews, kind of doing some background on him, he's a young kid and he comes off pretty immature. I don't think there's anything, personality or background-wise that's necessarily a red flag of, hey, we don't want this guy. But he's just a young guy that's still developing, on the floor and personally. And so I think that's raising questions. His representation, they've taken the approach that he's not worked out or visited any teams. And the way I see that is, especially in a good draft where you're drafting towards the top, these are big investments for these organizations. And having the guys come in, it's really not about the workout as much as it is getting to spend time with him, letting the medical staff evaluate him. And so I think they're just kind of leaving some more looming questions unanswered. And so it's just creating some uncertainty.
One of the names that's really taken off here in the Salt Lake market is Trey Johnson out of Texas. What have you seen from Trey Johnson, and why should Jazz fans be excited about that name?
Yeah, no, I've watched him a lot for a long time and followed him all through high school. He's a bucket getter. I mean, tough shot maker. Can create his own shot off the dribble. But he's a shooter and scorer, and I think shooting comes at a premium, especially in the modern NBA. And so I think he's prepared to step in right away and be somebody that could provide a scoring punch.
Sounds like Jeremiah Fears has been crushing his workouts the last couple of days. Is that a name that you would expect to be in the mix for Utah as well, or do you think that 5 may be a little rich, especially with already having Keontae George and Isaiah Collier being kind of on the smaller side there?
I don't think 5 is too high for him. I think that's right in his range. And I'm very impressed. It's similar to what I said about Trey Johnson. I've watched Fears for years. And keep in mind, he was supposed to be a senior in high school this past season. He reclassified up, and he was just terrific at Oklahoma. And I think his game fits the NBA well, too, of being an on-ball creator, really, really good in pick and roll. And the NBA's just got much better spacing. And so I think he's got a chance of being a very good player. I think the internal question that they're probably asking, as you mentioned, does he coexist with their young guards very well? And, I think he and Isaiah Collier, I'm not sure you can play those guys together much or at all. And so I think that's the question. Talent-wise, though, I wouldn't be surprised to see them, at least consider him heavily.
Looking now, the Jazz have 2 first-round picks. They have obviously the number 5, and they also have the 21st pick. Is there any guys that stand out in that range that maybe Jazz fans should be keeping an eye out to potentially see if they can find a diamond in the rough at number 21?
A lot of it's going to depend on what they do at 5. And I wouldn't be surprised to see them be active on the trade market as well. Obviously, Austin's taken over, but he's learned from his dad, and Danny's not scared to make some moves, especially on draft night. I think it's a combination. See if they stay put at these picks. And you just got to see who's there. I keep mentioning the uncertainty of the lottery, but even out after the lottery, that there's players with a lot of wide ranges. And again, I don't have a great answer for you because I don't know who's going to be there.
I like that you mentioned the trades and that you bring that up because there are rumblings of potentially some movement. What are you hearing from that, and what kind of moves should we be maybe anticipating come draft night?
Like I said, there's always a lot of trade chatter this time of year. This year, it feels like there's a lot more than usual. And speaking to executives and agents, the word that keeps coming up is uncertainty. Agents and their clients are pretty anxious. There's not as many backstops for guys, and it's just guys with very wide ranges. In years past, when we're doing our mock drafts and whatnot, this time of year we're usually able to pinpoint quite a few picks, and we're hearing rumblings of guys being in the mix. But again, most picks that there's 4 or 5 guys being attached to the pick, and it's honestly it's a lot of chaos right now behind the scenes.
I want to hear your thoughts on VJ Edgecombe. He was a name that was maybe in conversation for the Jazz at 5, it felt like, but now it feels like he might not be there by the time the Jazz are on the board. But you never know what can happen, especially, as you said, a lot of uncertainty here. So what does a guy like Edgecombe bring, and what do you think that he'll excel at the NBA level?
Yeah, my thought is he won't be there at 5, but if he is, he would be a great pick. He's got so much upside. He's a 6'5", elite athlete. Maybe on like the Russell Westbrook level, more of a 2 guard than an on-ball guard, but is very capable of making a lot happen. He's very dynamic, and he's a great kid. His approach to the game, even though he's a young guy, he plays so hard. Seems like a good teammate. I think he's got a chance of being a premier guy if everything clicks.
Also looking at the development of Akon Knippel. Obviously, we saw what he did at Duke. A lot of people have been impressed with him and his combine showing. What kind of abilities does Akon Knippel bring?
He's interesting. All these names we keep talking about have significant upside. I think Khan is sort of the safe pick of this draft. A 6'5", 6'6" shooter, high IQ. It's very easy to envision him having a long career as a very good complementary player and a guy that doesn't need the ball in his hands to be effective and, shoot on the move, shoot off the catch and shoot. You can plug a guy in like that just about anywhere. And so, I do think, his name's been brought up as high as 3 or 4. But he could even go down to 10. He definitely fits that mold of this year of a guy having a wide range. But I think he's very well thought of across the board. Just as I mentioned, he's a plug and play guy that even though he's young, I think everybody could use a guy like that.
When you think of a team like the Jazz, who don't particularly have a franchise player, do you think that maybe Knippel would be a safe choice because, you know what you're going to get in him essentially, and then maybe next year you could say, okay, let's go try and get a Cam Boozer or an AJ DeBonsa, and that Kon Knippel would be a good fit next to them?
I think that's a reasonable approach. Personally, looking at these guys that will likely be there, I would probably swing for a more upside guy myself. But I don't think it would be a bad pick. If Ace Bailey's there, or Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears, I think the upside is a lot higher.
Looking at another guy who has kind of boosted himself through combine and through his workouts, a guy with local ties, Yegor Demin, making his way up mock drafts. What have you seen from Demin, and how does his game translate to the NBA level?
Yeah, as you guys know, it was a very roller coaster year for him. He started off so hot, and then he slipped and really was struggling, and then really gained momentum towards the end of the season. And the pre-draft process, it seemed to help him a lot. I was at the NBA draft combine, I was at his pro day, and his name was buzzing. And his pro day, there were full staffs checking him out intently, and I think his range is very wide. I've heard rumblings that his representation was saying he's locked to be in the top 10. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but I've heard Brooklyn's interested. So my bet is he's somewhere, let's say 8 to 20, something like that. But he's going to be a great player. He's got size, one of the best passers I've ever seen, and I have hope he's going to be able to address some of his issues with physical strength and consistency with his outside shooting.
Another name that we've seen kind of rising lately, Kaman Malawach, and a lot of people have kind of talked about him potentially going to Utah, which is interesting because they obviously have Walker Kessler on the roster, so the thought there would be maybe potentially trading Kessler away. Do you think that's a strategy that an NBA team would do, especially a team in the Jazz's situation? Do you think that would be a smart move?
I think it just depends on the personal evaluation of both Malawach and Kessler. I have heard this conversation come up. It's similar to what we were talking about with Jeremiah Fears and Isaiah Collier. If a guy can't coexist, is there enough minutes long term if both players develop like you think they will? And that's I think sort of a fair question to ask. And that's why guys that have versatility have a lot of value in the NBA right now. It's a very positionless game, and guys that are versatile on both ends of the floor. It's a little safer or easier to kind of paint a picture of what their pathway to success is going to look like. And Malawach is a big-bodied center. He's a sort of an old school defensive anchor 5. He's huge wingspan. However, he is pretty mobile, can cover some space, and he's shown flashes he actually can shoot the ball. And that's one thing in his pro day this year. I heard something like he had 18 threes in a row. So people are really excited about him, and I think I'd be surprised if he got out of the top 10.
Looking at this draft, if the Jazz's pick doesn't pan out, there's a lot of conversations and a lot of talk about next year's draft being either just as good and maybe even better. How do you evaluate next year's 2026 class?
I'm excited about this year's draft. Next year might be even better. I spent this last week at USA Basketball. Their U19 team had a training camp, and some of the guys were there, including AJ DeBanza and Koa Pete, that's going to Arizona, was there. Mikal Brown going to Louisville. Very, very excited about this group. And AJ, every time I see him, I just get more and more excited. He checks so many boxes, and he's a young guy that still needs to develop, but his upside might be as high as any prospect that I've ever seen.
Outside of the draft and more on the NBA as a whole, what are you hearing on the Kevin Durant trade front? I know that was a move that some people were kind of expecting to be made possibly within the last week. There's motivation for Phoenix to get it done before the draft. Do you think that's something that we're going to see here in the next couple of days?
I think so. I'm hearing everything that's being published out there. It sounds like there is a ton of trade talk. I do believe they will move him. I think they sort of have to at this point. It sounds like their asking price has been pretty high. For a guy that's essentially going to be a short-term rental. Just with his age and how his contract's set up. But I do think something will happen, and I'm hoping it happens sooner than later, so we can start figuring out what's going to happen in this draft, and I try and get my mock draft somewhat accurate.
Yeah.
No, I think everyone's just kind of waiting for that shoe to fall, whether it's KD or whether it's maybe even Giannis. I know that there's a lot of talk about Giannis's kind of the trade cooling off for Giannis Antetokounmpo, but is that still something that's at play that we might be able to see before this draft?
All indications, like from my perspective, is that Giannis will be there at least for next season. But I think things in the NBA can change quickly, and my dad's been with Milwaukee for 28 years. So on a personal note, I'm hoping he'll stay with the Bucks.
All right. Well, Matt, we really appreciate you taking some time to join us today, especially on a Saturday. I know that can be tough. With this being a real busy season for you. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll be sure to keep an eye out for your latest mock draft.
All right, thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
There you go. That is Matt Babcock, NBA draft analyst for Babcock Hoops, joining us here on the KSL Sports Zone. Really interesting insight there. I think the Ace Bailey situation, something that fascinates me. We haven't really seen anything like that where a player is flat out refusing to work for teams and canceling workouts. So that's a bit of a wild card there. But regardless, I think the Jazz are going to have a crack at getting a really good player on Wednesday night.
I think, if teams aren't deterred by Ace Bailey and everything that's come out about Ace Bailey this past week, if we don't see movement at the top, right? If the Spurs keep their pick, if the 76ers keep their pick, I don't see why Ace Bailey doesn't go top. I don't see why Ace Bailey doesn't go third.
Talent-wise, yes.
Yeah.
With all the stuff off the court, it sounds like sounds like his agent is tough to deal with. And I think that's hard, and that's something that teams probably try and have to balance. Versus you're drafting a kid, right? So how much of their personality, if he has personality issues, how much of that can be changed by the time he turns into a 25-year-old versus right now as an 18-year-old? So I think that plays a big part. And obviously, if you don't get a chance to talk to him, you might not know. So that it's a big risk. And I could understand why a team, the Jazz, for an example, we talk about how big of a night Wednesday is going to be. I would totally understand why they wouldn't want to mortgage their future by taking a guy who you have no idea is going to pan out, no matter how talented he is on the floor.
I think kind of what, to what Matt said, if a VJ Edgecombe or an Ace Bailey is available at 5, is that, especially in the case of Ace Bailey, is that a gamble that the Jazz decide to take? Yeah. And I'm interested to see I think if Edgecombe is available at 5, I think it's an obvious answer. You take Edgecombe. But if Bailey ends up falling to 5th and the Jazz, have that opportunity to pick him, I'm curious to see if the Jazz decide
if they pull the trigger.
If they pull the trigger and decide to take that gamble.
I've been thinking, well, first off, I will say, and this is kind of a bad trait that I have, is I can be talked into anything. I'm such a hopeful person when it comes to sports. Like, I have read so many good things about a lot of the prospects. And yeah, I have, preferences, or you could say players that I think would fit the Jazz better, I guess is the better way to put it. But man, I've really been talked into Con Knippel. And I know that the upside conversation is something that can be had. And do you really want to spend a top 5 pick on a guy that's likely not going to be the best player on your team and things like that? But when you look at what Con Knippel does well and what Will Hardy wants as far as play hard and pass, and it's like that versus Ace Bailey, for example. Ace Bailey does not pass. And yes, he plays hard, and I don't want to discredit that, but not only is Con Knippel one of the best or the best shooter in this class, he is a very, very high IQ passer on the levels of, we talked about how crucial Tyrese Halliburton is for the Pacers, right? And Knippel's not going to be your primary ball handler. He's not going to be the point guard running the team, but he's going to be involved in a lot of these actions and a lot of these movements and knowing when to pass the ball, when to shoot, how to read an NBA defense. And I think that gets overlooked because of physical talent. And maybe he's not the best athlete as, like a VJ Edgecombe or whatever. I don't want the ceiling argument to take away from his true abilities that are going to translate.
I think, I understand not wanting to speed up the rebuild, and I understand wanting to get out of this a little bit sooner and start winning some games a little bit sooner. But I wouldn't mind taking a player with an incredibly high ceiling that has the potential to be the star again this draft, especially knowing what's coming in 2026.
Yeah, well, and the way I look at it too is you took those big swings the last 2 drafts with Taylor Hendricks and Cody Williams.
Yeah.
If you whiff on this pick, let's say you take Ace Bailey and he completely busts, you're in big trouble.
Yes.
So if you're the Jazz, you almost want to take a safe pick here. And it's not like the safe pick is a bad thing. It's not like you're getting a bum. I mean, Con Knippel still has really high upside. He could still make all-star games. He's just never going to be a probably top 10 player in the NBA, right? He'll probably be borderline top 25, top 30 if he hits his peak. But that's not bad. You still need that to win games, especially where you're the Jazz and you don't have anything close to that right now. So if you have a guy with the higher floor and you're just trying to build a team, go get that. Especially if you have a concrete plan for next year. If you're still planning on being bad, if you want to hold on to your pick and not send it to Oklahoma City so you know you're going to be picking 8 or higher, go get the guy that you know can fit next to anybody else. Because you need a team to win. You need guys who play specific roles, not 10 young guys who all think they're going to be the best player on the team. Like, you need guys who have identified roles, and I think Con Knippel fits that really well. Obviously, shooting is a big skill in the NBA. Passing is a big skill in the NBA. So I think that Knippel fits what the Jazz want and what Hardy wants in more ways than one. And you could say this is me pounding the table for him. Obviously, we're going to see what happens. Again, I think that being at pick 5 means that you're going to get a good prospect regardless. So with that being said, if the Jazz don't get Knippel, whether it is Ace Bailey or a Trey Johnson or Jeremiah Fears, I do think whatever prospect comes in is going to have a very clear path to success.
I would agree. And, if everything goes the way that I think people think it's going to go and nothing crazy happens in the top 4, right? Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper. And this is where it gets murky, right? Is it Ace Bailey? Is it VJ Edgecombe? Who goes there? Who goes what? But I think at 5, I think for me personally, the best bet would be either Con or Trey.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you. But again,
Trey Johnson
with
or
this
Con
draft in particular, it's like you have no idea.
Yeah,
But when you look at what the Jazz lack, right, they don't, I mean, I know Sensabaugh is a good shooter, but outside of that, like, they do not have enough shooting on the team. And so, yeah, that's where you look at Trey Johnson, and that's where you look at Con Knippel. That's just what makes most sense to me. So
makes sense to me.
Or us, I guess. Yeah. That's what we're saying, us. So
we'll see what happens, man. Wednesday's gonna be. I think for a lot of Jazz fans, it'll be a little bit nerve wracking, right?
Oh,
because, we were talking about this in the break, but it's not. I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this is a monumental draft for the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
And if they don't hit on this pick, that might just get you stuck in a rebuilding situation for another 3 or so years, man.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we were kind of mentioning off the air. I don't want it to sound like too much of an exaggeration, but Wednesday night, if you whiff on that 5th pick, if you whiff on 21, if you don't come out with a good player from this year's draft, that's going to pause this rebuild. It's going to stagnate, right?
Yes.
And you don't know how much longer it's going to take. You need to come out of this draft with something. So that's why it's so big. I want to give a plug real quick. Obviously, we're going to have the best draft show in town. We're going to be at The Cage. It's going to be The Cage is on Redwood Road. It's a batting cage, so that's really fun. We're going to be killing it with draft coverage all night long. Our draft show will officially be hosted by Jake Scott, Ben Anderson, and Steve Cleveland. A lot of other people are going to stop by, JJ, Hands, PK, Scotty G. That's all round 1. Round 2, it's going to be Ben Anderson and Chandler Holt killing the draft coverage. So a lot of guys working Wednesday night to bring you the best coverage possible. And I'm excited because I think this Kevin Durant trade, when it comes, it's going to set off a bunch of dominoes. You could see other moves get made possibly before Wednesday, but I mean, The draft is always fun. So.
Right. You have the KD rumblings. What's going to happen there? earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, there was reports that the Spurs and the 76ers were shopping around their picks.
Yeah.
At 2 and 3, and so we'll see what happens, man. But I'm kind of on the train and on the sentiment where there's moves to be made.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to see what happens as we get closer and closer to Wednesday night, and even on Wednesday night.
Yeah. During the draft, don't rule out trades getting made as well. Again, thanks to Matt Babcock. Sorry for joining us there. You can check him out at BabcockHoops.com. We got to take a break. Coming up next, we'll hit 5 minutes of. Got a couple other things to talk about. Of course, the Lakers selling for a record $10 billion. We'll hit that next. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back to the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time for 5 minutes of. Lot to talk about. Always a ton of sports news, not a ton of time left in our short little Saturday show. Alex, what should we start off with here?
Well, I think the big one is the Lakers, man.
Largest price tag for any professional sports sale ever. $10 billion. Mark Walter acquires the Lakers from the Buss family. $10 billion. Can you believe that?
$10 billion is an insane amount of money.
Ryan Smith bought the Jazz for like two point something billion, right?
The times have changed.
Now they do estimate that the valuation has doubled since then, right? So you're looking at maybe close to $5 billion if you're lucky for the Jazz. But obviously, I mean, the Lakers are one of the sports franchises in the world.
Yes.
They are. You can go anywhere and people are going to recognize that logo because of all the legacy they've had. A lot of championships. Almost all of the best players in NBA history have played for the Lakers at some point. They always seem to acquire star talents. I do think it's funny that this sale comes after they acquire Luka Doncic. There's still a chance that he could end up leaving in free agency. You never know. He doesn't have a ton of time left on his deal, but seems like he's the next face of that franchise. So good time to capitalize for the Buss family. Obviously, you get $10 billion is a lot.
I think, as far as the new ownership coming in and, there's the big Luka Doncic question that needs to be answered. I think it would be silly of them not to do everything they can to try to keep him.
Yeah.
He is going to be your face. He is your face of the franchise now. He is going to be the guy. Obviously, there's still a question on whether or not LeBron returns, whether or not LeBron continues to play. And if LeBron decides that this is it, I highly doubt it. But if he decides that this is it, then you have to do every single thing that you can to keep Luka Doncic because he's your guy now.
Yeah.
And that's probably going to be one of the first, as far as, roster building goes, that's going to be one of the first big questions that we're going to see from this new ownership. While I think, Jeannie Buss continues to kind of be the governor and operate the team, which I think is weird. You sell your majority stake and then you continue to run the team. But we'll see we'll see how that dynamic ends up working out.
Well, as long as LeBron is there, he's going to run the team. But you never know. I mean, I think they kind of showed with the Luka trade, specifically trading Anthony Davis away. I think that was the first sign like, hey, LeBron, we're taking power back. And I think this is continuing that trend, right? This guy also owns the Dodgers, by the way, one of the best teams in baseball, especially after getting Ohtani and how big that is. So it seems like the Lakers are going to have an opportunity to really spend as far as having the best facilities and the best training rooms and gyms and nutrition and all of that stuff that really gives you the edge over everybody else. I don't want to think about the Lakers becoming good again, but there's a chance that they might. And, of course, you've got to make the right front office moves as far as putting players on the court, but starting with Luka and then building from there, that's not a bad spot.
Absolutely not. I think the Lakers, after this sale, and they're already in a position to kind of succeed.
Yeah.
They just need to build on it, right? You already have your superstar, you have LeBron James. Now it's just kind of starting to plan the after, what comes after LeBron.
Yeah.
And again, a big part of that will be Luka Doncic, but also you need to have, like we're seeing with the NBA Finals and with these teams, you need to have depth. You need to have a team around your best player, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 5 years with this Los Angeles Lakers team, especially if they're going to want to try to capitalize on another championship while you have Luka Doncic.
Yeah, I agree there. Let's switch gears, talk Utah Mammoth. Preseason schedule came out. Of course, it's preseason, but I think the big note here, so their first technical home preseason game is September 30th. That game is going to be played in Boise, Idaho against the LA Kings. But October 2nd and 4th are their actual home preseason games. The big takeaway, the reason I want to bring that up, Alex, those are going to be the first events at the Delta Center after this summer's renovations. And we know that they're going to continue to do renovations the next 2 years after this one, right? So it's not going to be a completely finished product, but we are going to start seeing the first changes and the first whatever they're working on. I know that there's a plan and all that, and they're going in phases. We're going to see that for the first time October 2nd, and I think that's worth noting.
Absolutely. And, it's always a good time going across the street and going to Delta Center, whether it's whether it's watching a Jazz game, whether it's watching the Mammoth now, whether it's going to a concert, hanging out. Delta Center is a fun venue. And, when they released the plans and when they kind of gave us an idea of what their vision was with the renovations, it made me excited. And so I'm excited to see, again, being able to return to Delta Center, seeing what all this off-season construction across the street has done to Delta Center and how they're going to continue to improve it for both Utah Jazz fans and for Utah Mammoth fans.
Yeah, and just to have hockey on the ice.
And to have hockey come back, man.
Last year's preseason was really fun.
It was.
They even did they did shootouts after all the games just for fun. Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
And, honestly, I think it's a good idea for them to go to Boise. Start stealing some of those Boise fans. Start building a fan base in Idaho, right? You want to grow this fan base. You want to create some momentum behind this team, and so I think it's a good thing for them to head out to Boise and try to, if there's some LA Kings fans out there, or if there's some Duck fans out there, or whoever they support, right? Go out, make yourself known in the Boise market, and try to steal some hockey fans over there.
Wrapping up this segment, we got to mention real quick, University of Wisconsin is suing Miami for poaching.
This is a big one.
For tampering. I hope it's a big one. I hope that this sets a trend. Long story short, Wisconsin is alleging that Miami contacted Xavier Lucas. He's I believe, is he a defensive back?
Yes.
Yeah.
Freshman.
While he was under contract, attending school at Wisconsin, they are saying that Miami contacted him and got him to enter the transfer portal and go to Miami. So that's big because obviously that was a story here locally. There were allegations of a certain school doing that to another school. So this could potentially set a precedent, but at the same time, that would be ideal, yes. But I don't think this is going to go anywhere. If I'm honest, if I'm being 100% honest with you, I don't know how much this really changes. Simply because there are so many schools, so many programs, so many players, so many agents. It would just be way too hard to stay on top of all of that.
Yeah, the complaint was filed yesterday, Friday. Where Wisconsin claims that Miami staff members and prominent alumnus met with Lucas and his family before he was even in the transfer portal, and kind of enticed Lucas to leave Wisconsin and obviously make his way down there to Miami. I think this one's huge, man, because if it does go somewhere and it does go through the courts and ultimately there's a winner and a loser, I feel like that it has the potential to set a very big precedence.
Right. As far as teams away?
Yes, as far as tampering, as far as poaching players goes. If Wisconsin comes out and wins this lawsuit, right, we're going to be setting the precedence of poaching and tampering, making it basically illegal.
Yeah.
But if Miami comes out on top, then I think college athletics, you thought it was the Wild Wild West. That now, just wait. If Miami wins this, it's just going to get even worse.
I don't know how much worse it can get. I mean, everybody. I think everybody's already doing it. Is the thing?
I think it can.
But yeah, I'm with. Regardless, either this is going to be like a really big move that really impacts the transfer portal, or nothing is going to change at all.
Right.
So
that's why I think that this one's so important, because it has that potential to really change things and maybe potentially give us some rules and some laws in regards to the poaching, but we'll see what comes out of it. There is still that chance that the judges just toss the case and nothing comes out of it,
or there's a settlement or whatever.
So we'll see, but there's potential there to find some stability, I guess, in college football or in college athletics, and I think that's needed.
Yeah, I think it's very, very much needed. All right, let's take a break. Unfortunately, the show is coming to an end for today. We will wrap it up next. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome back. It's the Saturday Show 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Putting another bow on it, wrapping up today's show. Last week we talked about the Indiana Fever. They got Caitlin Clark back, and they beat the New York Liberty.
Yes.
Handed the Liberty their first loss of the season. Then we saw some fireworks, some fights throughout the week. And my hot take, I don't think it's even that hot of a take. I think this is great for the WNBA. I think
couldn't agree more.
And, a lot of what their marketing, I guess you could say, was built on last year was Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. And I think Caitlin Clark as a player has ascended above that, right?
Yes.
Because she's a much better player than Reese. And so you still had the issue of a lot of the WNBA players are jealous of her. They do not like her. They foul her a lot harder than she needs to be fouled. So what do the Fever do? They go out and get an enforcer to stand up for Caitlin Clark when things go south, and that's exactly what we saw last week, and I am here for every second of it. I don't know it's the Phoenix Mercury, right? I believe is their name.
The team that they fought against?
Yeah.
It was the Connecticut Sun.
Oh, Connecticut Sun. Okay.
Yeah,
so it was the Sun.
Yeah.
I don't know their players' names, and I'm sorry, but they were getting into it. But then the one girl comes and just body checks Caitlin Clark, like trucks her, sends her to the ground.
Yeah.
And Sophie Cunningham, newly acquired member of the Fever, she steps up. She says, hey, don't do that, yada, yada, yada. And then we saw later in the game, hard foul, and there's a big fight. As far as Cunningham, she grabbed the girl and threw her down on the ground. And I think it's what they need. And I know it's kind of cheap. It's kind of, I don't want to say dirty, but it's like you need eyeballs, and that's how you get eyeballs.
I mean, it was trending. It was trending probably just as much, honestly, as Tyrese Halliburton on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
When the news comes out that Halliburton can't play, that's a trending topic, and then you pull up social media and I go into the search bar, and the first thing that pops up over Tyrese was this WNBA scuffle between the Sun and the Fever.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I guess that's what people want to see. I'm more excited. I'm more so excited about the last year, like you mentioned, Christian. Last year it was Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, but now it seems like it's the Fever and Caitlin Clark versus everybody else, because it seems like it's happening night in and night out, where someone's trying to take a shot at Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've been kind of keeping my eye on when it comes to the WNBA.
Well, and eventually you're going to get to the point where the Fever are contenders, and I don't believe they're still quite not there yet, right? But they are rising, and they're a rising team. And eventually Caitlin Clark is going to be good enough to where she can carry that team to a championship. And up until then, I think she's going to have to earn the respect of everybody. And I think she deserves everybody else's respect. But for whatever reason, they don't like her. And we're seeing it every single night. So I think it's fun. I think it's good. I don't know if that was their kind of thought process of picking up Cunningham. I don't know if she had that reputation before of kind of being a scrapper, but seeing her step up for Caitlin Clark, I really enjoyed that, and I think that was is kind of heartwarming in a sense. Like, yeah, because we didn't see that last year. We didn't see any of her teammates like defend her. You know, you see in an NFL game, the quarterback gets hit after the whistle, and all of the offensive linemen go and beat up the guy that breathes on the quarterback.
Right.
That's what the Fever needed for Caitlin Clark.
I 100% agree. Shout out Sophie Cunningham for giving us the viral clip of the week.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I loved it as well. As far as what we've got on the station, rest of the day, Utah Royals are playing pre-match show at 2:30, and then kickoff against the Seattle Reign FC. That is going to be at 2, both signals, because RSL is off for the rest of the month, essentially. And then we've got the Bees playing versus Sacramento later on today. That game is at 7. So everything is kind of spaced out here on the Zone today. Still a lot of action.
Still a lot of action. If want to give a quick shout out to Matt Babcock again for jumping on and joining us. If you missed that conversation earlier, go download it. Go see it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Lot of good insight there from about the upcoming draft, and then of course coming up Wednesday, NBA draft show, and Friday, the NHL draft show here on the KSL Sports Zone. So there's going to be a lot of action this week, Christian. I'm looking forward to it.
I know now that we've got Game 7 tomorrow, and then that's it, and we're really going to enter off-season mode. And I think there are going to be a lot of big news stories the next couple weeks, whether it's Kevin Durant getting traded, whatever the Utah Jazz end up doing. We are going to know what's happening here in Salt Lake City as far as rebuild or starting to contend. It's going to take shape, so stay tuned. Thanks for listening. Catch you next week. It's the Saturday Show, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.